Right.
Go.
It's July 24th, 2004, and we're interviewing Dr. Michael Kontos and his wife, Evanthea. We'll start off by, if you'd like to tell us any of your memories of your grandparents, either on your mother's side or on your father's side.
I think the way I would probably approach this is I'll lead up to this by saying that I was born in Aurora, Illinois, November 18th, 1936, and born of parents of Greek ancestry. My father was born in Levidi, Greece, just outside of Tripoli, and in Peloponnesos. My mother was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her parents, though, were from Greece. My papu, her father, was from Kalamata. And my grandmother, Angeliki, was from Asia Minor, more specifically Nazli in Asia Minor. She was a Greek school teacher, and both my grandparents came over.
She was educated. She was educated in Asia Minor.
She was educated in Asia Minor, yes, and was a Greek school teacher, and they both came over to the United States and lived in the Chicago area for many, many years. And my grandfather ran a little hot dog wagon, hot dog stand in Chicago, and they have two children. My late Uncle Jan Arvin, who was an actor in Hollywood for many years under contract with Red Skelton for 24 years. And we have many pictures of him, and every once in a while we will see him. He was even in the Poseidon Adventure. He was the doctor in that particular movie. And every once in a while we'll be watching TV and we'll say, oh, there's Uncle John. His sister, or my mother, Rubini, was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I should say my grandparents went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin first and then came down into the Chicago area. And my father came into the country illegally.
He was 16 years.
16?
Dad was 16 years old,
right.
And when he left
Greece?
He left Greece at night, and they gave him his mother washed his coat, and that was like a cape, all wool, and he used to love to cook.
Yeah.
Also, he had thought about the priesthood. He never went into the priesthood, but he was promised that they were going to bring him to the United States, and he paid money to Italian people that they put them on boats and they put them down
in the hold, in
yes,
a banana boat, I
and
believe.
and they took them to Cuba, and not the United States. So go ahead.
And he ultimately jumped ship there and somehow or another made it to the United States, worked his way up into the New York area and ultimately into Chicago. And because he liked to cook, he ended up at one of the famous Black Hawk restaurants that may be before your time, but it was downtown on Wabash, Don Roth's Black Hawk restaurant. My dad worked there for many years as a mayera, a chef in the kitchen there. He then ultimately came to Aurora out here in Aurora, Illinois, and together with a cousin of his opened up a restaurant, it was called the Purity Grill.
But he married your mom in Chicago.
Yeah, I should, I suppose, backtrack on
Do you know what year your dad left Greece, approximately?
Your father was, if you want to stop it.
No, that's
Yeah, your father was 16 when he came, and he was born 1908. So you have to figure out.
1924.
Yeah.
somewhere around there,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And yes, I should say he met, my wife probably could tell you more about how he met my mother. And of course he was in Chicago working as a chef illegally, as an illegal alien.
Mother Ruby, Michael's mom, she was working for their uncle doctor in Chicago.
My late Dr. Minnis Joannides,
Joannides,
thoracic
and-
surgeon.
And so Dad went there. He was sick, and he went there, and he, after he finished, he asked my mother-in-law for a date. And my mother-in-law was very upset with him because, she was the receptionist. And she says, how do you dare to do that, to say that? So anyway, he followed for a few days, and then he tried to pay her fare on the streetcar. of course, those days when you worked in a Greek home as a mother, as a daughter, you never had enough money. You were given enough money to take the streetcar and go, you brought all your
Yes.
money home, So, and that's how their whole love affair started. Going back and forth to the streetcar, and then they eloped. That was very unusual for those days. So his mother and dad, they eloped because his grandmother, being from Asia Minor, educated, she wanted a doctor or a lawyer. She didn't want a chef from Greece. And so dad went before that and asked to marry their daughter. They refused him. So the two of them, they were very much in love, and they eloped. And then dad, somebody turned him in. And it was another Greek who turned him in to the immigration. So they called my mother-in-law. She was at home with Yaya, and they said, your husband, Harry Kontos, is in jail. Now in Chicago. She couldn't ask because her mother was in the room. She couldn't ask who's in jail. So she says to her mother, Mary wants me to go and help her with something at home, so I'm going to go over there. So she went, she got a friend, and they started taking down all the jails. They were going from one jail to the other, and they will go and they will say, no, we don't have, and she was asking Kontos also.
Yeah.
And they would say, no, we don't have anybody by that name here. So finally, the last one that she was there, she hears him singing at Samiko, ένας αητός καθότανε. And she says, he's the one, because they said, no, he's not here. And they said, he's the one, I can hear him, So that's how, now they got married. He had all his friends pitch in because he was not, he used to dress very nicely, but he didn't have much money because he used to like to just, look good. And so he had his friends. He had the Sipsis orchestra years ago. There was a prominent orchestra in Chicago.
Right.
They play for the wedding, and in fact, they played for our wedding too after.
John
And
Sipsis.
he had a very nice wedding, and he said, we're going to go now to California because the brother was there. Or he couldn't afford to take the mother to California. So they went to a small hotel. He went to Greek town, and he got kefalakia, and that was their, meal
honeymoon
the
dinner.
next, And so they were, walking down on the street in Chicago, and somebody calls my yaya, our yaya, and she says, Αγγελική, πού είναι τα παιδιά, πήγανε στην Καλιφόρνια, And she said, ναι, πήγαν στην Καλιφόρνια. Μα πώς μπορεί να πήγαν στην Καλιφόρνια, αφού εγώ τους είδα on the streetcar, And so then my mother-in-law called, and she says, and Yaya says, you come here. The way that they came out was they slept for a couple nights with the parents-in-law, and my father-in-law liked an extra pillow. So Yaya says, if he wants an extra pillow, he got married to you, he better go out and buy you a pillow. So that night, Dad and Mom, they came to Aurora.
Yeah.
There were also quite a few people from Lviv in Aurora. That's how it made him, it's like the Mexicans from Tijuana, if there are people, they would go, and there were quite a few, not a lot, but there were a few families from Lviv, and they helped him out.
So originally they were living in Chicago then?
Yes,
Florida.
yeah.
But they ultimately, then they came to Aurora, and with a cousin of his, they opened up a restaurant right on Broadway, 64 South Broadway, and it was called the Purity Grill. And they operated it for a while, and then I called him Theo, but he was really a cousin of my father's. They split off, and Dad kept the place and changed the name to the Marine Grill and enlarged it, and it became a nightclub. It was really not, the name was deceiving. When you hear Marine Grill, you thought maybe it's just a lunch counter place. It was a very nice restaurant, and it finally burned down in 1964. But he operated it for, probably 30 to 35 years. I forgot exactly the time.
Yeah,
And
close to
a
35
very
years.
prominent businessman downtown in Aurora. And Dad passed away in 1995, and has been dead
9 years.
9 years now. And my mother is 92, going on 93, and she's in a nursing home in Rockton, Illinois. My sister is close by, lives close by there, and still with us and still going strong.
But they lived for many, many years in Aurora.
Yeah, in the Aurora area. And as I said, I was born here. I have a brother and a sister, and
Are you the oldest of? Or?
I'm the oldest.
We lost his brother.
I lost my brother about 3-4 years ago.
3 years.
3 years ago, and so it's just my sister and I. My sister lives in Rockford, Illinois, and I have lived here in Aurora all my life, except when I did a little stint with the United States Navy as a dental officer. Other than that, we have lived in this Aurora area that entire time.
So, where did you go to school when you here? So you attended school in Aurora?
I went to Oswego, even though Aurora is my home. Oswego, which is what 5 minutes from here. My parents built a home out there in the Oswego Township area when I was 5 years old or 6 years old, and I went through the entire Oswego school system. Graduated from high school there. And then I attended North Central College in Naperville for 4 years and received my Bachelor of Arts degree there. And I was interested in going into medical school, but I changed my mind my senior year and applied to the University of Illinois. Pardon?
When we met,
Yeah, to the University of Illinois College of Dentistry, and I was accepted there, and I attended there in Chicago for 4 years. But now there's a very unique thing happened to me during my junior year at North Central College. I got involved with a group at the college called the European Trippers, which every summer would go to Europe for 2 or 3 months. And I went to my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, I'd like to go to Europe with this group." And he looked at me with one of those, "Yeah, Dad, tora malista." I worked during the summertime at my dad's nightclub. Then I got the idea, why don't I say to him, "Dad, maybe it'll give me an opportunity to see your mother, my grandmother, who I've never seen her." And that's the person that's in that picture there, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So in 1958, I went to him and I said, "Afto, and he looked at me and said, "Really?" And I asked the tour director, and he said, "Sure, while we're in Switzerland, you can leave the group and go to Greece for 2 weeks and then rejoin us in Rome." And then we went on to Paris and France.
So this group was just going on vacation, or?
This was a church college. It was the Evangelical United Brethren Church College, North Central in Naperville, Illinois. It ultimately has been taken over by the Methodist Church now. But they would go over these kids. Most of them were all either pre-theological students or were very religious students. And they'd go over and we'd stay in the homes, especially when we were in Germany. In Germany, it was called the Evangelische Gemeinschaft. I studied German for 2 years in college, and we would work at some of these churches, help cleaning up the yards or working out in the playground and do some building and stuff like that. And then in the evenings we would have exchange sessions, seminars, and talk with some of the German students about how life was in the United States, etc. And so I went over there.
Excuse me, also for you guys to experience also.
Yes, to experience it.
How the German people were, how the different countries. That they
So how long would
visited.
you stay in each place?
We were about 2 weeks in England, we were 2 weeks in Germany, and we were in France for a week and a half. We were in Italy, we went to Venice, we went to Rome, Florence, all over. And they were in Switzerland for 2 weeks, and that was the 2 weeks. I just spent 1 day in Zurich, and then I flew to Athens, and I met
And
my...
excuse me, as Michael started to say, those days, it was not like now, the kids, they say, "I'm going to go 6 months, to Spain or to Italy." It was very difficult to explain to your parents that they were immigrant parents when they need in the summertime to participate in a business that I'm going, so.
Yeah, times have changed. Like I started to say originally, when I said this to my father, he gave me one of those looks like, "You got to be joking, come on. And I'm going to send you to Europe for 3 months." So at Telespondent, I ended up going to Greece, and I had an opportunity to go visit my grandmother. Prior to my leaving, there was a gentleman who happened to be my wife's uncle, who owned a restaurant, the Presto restaurant in Berwyn, Illinois, heard that I was going to go to Greece, and because he knew my dad, etc., etc., he came to our house one day and said, "Do me a favor."
Excuse me, honey. His wife happened to be my mother's sister.
Okay.
Okay, and actually the relation was through her. and my cousins that had come to Europe, he was in the military, and when he realized that I didn't have no chance to get in the university there, he says, we have to bring you to the United States, because at that time we had only the one in Athens and the other one in Salonika. It was not like now that you have, all that. And for any person, I mean, very few, they were lucky, it used to take 2-3 years with studying outside of your, all that, in order to be able to enter the university, even if you were a good student, because there were so few that they can enter.
Positions, yeah.
And so they said, we have to bring you to the United States. So Michael brought, do you want me to continue? Because
No, I mean, it
Yeah.
does make a difference. You may as well interview her.
Michael left Germany, and he had a package of clothes of his that he sent from there. So it was the paqueto, the package, they used to call it. And but his my relatives, they gave him some money because my yaya used to live with us in Athens. And my aunt, she says, take this money and give them to my mother, and also to Eva, because they will take you out, her and her brother. I have only one brother. And so he was going around with, Or you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to,
Okay.
because I tell it better than you do.
No, but you changed it.
Well, sure, I embellish it a little bit.
That's fine.
But anyway, he came and gave me the letter and everything. I went to Greece, and my cousins took me around. We did some sightseeing, etc. And I think it was only about 4 or 5 days left before I was supposed to leave, and I take
So
this.
you went straight to your grandmother's.
Yes, I
where
went
she
to
was living.
Levidi, and I
Okay.
went with my
Okay.
cousins, my first cousins and everything, and I said, I have this letter, I'm supposed to look up this woman and give this to her. Shall we try to find her? And we knew where it was. It was in Petralona, and
Was that nearby?
in
Athens,
Athens,
yeah.
a suburb
Oh, in
of
Athens.
Athens,
Mhm.
suburb of
Okay.
Athens. So we get into a car and we're driving around trying to find her house. She is walking down the street knowing that this Americanaki, see, is coming to see her and give her this money because she's leaving to go to Canada,
Through Canada to come down.
to Montreal to come down. Well, I driving around with this cubaro of ours, and she flags us down. See?
I saw him, and
Yeah, she flags us down and says, excuse me, but would you by any chance happen to be looking for Evanthia Zaharias' home? And we says, yeah, sure. Well, she lives right around the corner, the second house. Then we'll late she's around the corner, the second house. I says, fine. So she continues on, we drive around the block, we park, we go over, knock on the door, ring the doorbell, what it was, Adeti Mamitora. She opens the door and there she is. Now I look at her, and this sounds corny, but I look at her and I say to myself, Michael, that's the woman you're going to marry. I spent several days with her. She was preparing to leave with the boat. Then everybody went by
Right.
boat. When I went to Europe with the group, we went with Caravi, with the boat. We didn't fly. It was too
very
expensive.
expensive.
Too expensive then. This was 1958. She took me around. Our first date was to the Proto Necrotopia.
no. See, that's why you're missing. The first day, it was Asteria.
All right.
It was the plaza, that they had just, the Asteria in Greece. So it was just, at that time, they had just opened. He was very impressed. He says, this looks nicer than some of the places in the United States. I mean, it was just, very nice. And of course, it was like The Godfather. I had all my, my brother, my cousins, the boy cousins, and also we asked for his cousin, the female cousin from Levidi, to join us and come and stay at our house. And so, anyway, we were going all over the place, and the day
As a group.
As a group, yeah, of course. And of course, he was not a prospective
No,
abroad.
she had no idea that I
No,
was
no. And-
interested, and I wasn't. Shall we say, I wasn't, overly interested in her. But an attractive girl. We were having fun. We were going here. We were going there, etc. And I know she's leaving because the baulo's there and the.
I mean, I had
the
my whole
suitcases.
dowry. I was not
Yeah.
going to go back.
And I
because
kept-
I didn't want to live in Greece. I was so upset. Because the opportunities for me, they were not there at the time. I was very upset.
I kept asking her what
I was
what
going
color
to wear.
what color dress
but,
she
but
gonna have.
1 second before that, All right. Before that, we went to Asteria, and he was taking pictures of me. I mean, whatever I did, if I went like this, he took a picture of me. If I went like that, so I thought, that's Americanaki. What is wrong with him? He's taking a picture. So anyway, he took the pictures. Then we had him over, and then say about what you were asking me.
Well, I kept asking her about her dress and what color it was because my ulterior motive was to buy her a bouquet of flowers, etc. So the day came where she's ready to leave. They deliver the flowers. She looks at the flowers and wonders what the heck's going on here. See, so
you're leaving a lot of things out. The night before, we hadn't been
we
by
don't have all
ourselves,
day.
and I will go really fast.
No,
Am
that's
I
fine, that's
taking
fine.
your time?
No, this is the interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. The night before, first of all, he drove me nuts about what I was going to wear. I thought, this is Americano. Why he cares about what I'm going to wear? I mean, this was not what was custom in Greece. No boy would ask me what I'm going to wear before going away. So anyway, he was talking with my brother. He was talking with my uncle. And the night before, I said to him, "Now you have been in most places. Where have you haven't been?" I said, and he says, "I think, in Athens, I went with the other people too." So I says, "But you haven't gone to the first cemetery." So, because we have, the family. And he says, "No, I mean, he heard the cemetery," and he says, "Okay, we'll go." So the two of us, we went, and I asked him, because he had hives all over his back. And I said, "You have been drinking milk or something that bothered you." So he takes my hand, and I thought, Themu, what? he says, "I'm going to tell you something, but please don't say anything." The Kubari that he went, they had bed bugs. So that was his first experience in Greece. It was terrible. So anyway, when we finished, we went home. I had a big party. Everybody was at the house. And so in fact, he thought one of my brother's boyfriends was my boyfriend, he thought. So I left, and they all came down to the boat. We had like 3 taxis, coming down the boat and everything. And of course he came along. And I didn't cry at all. My mother came. I was very spoiled. My mother came up on the boat to fix my wardrobe, And my aunt also came along, and she said, she's going to be very sorry because you have really taken care of her. My mom says, "Don't worry, she's going to take care of herself. I'm not worried." So I started blowing kisses to my relatives I was living, and at that time I got more emotional because the boat was going woo, And I see first one blowing kisses was, my friend. So, but he told me, he says, "You're my sister's age, and I would like you," because I was taking about 2 years of English, private tutoring in Athens. And he says, "I would like you to learn to be exposed more to the college life, and my sister is in college right now, she's your age." So he says, "I will write to you when you go to Canada." All right, go from there.
You don't leave me very much.
Oh yes, I leave you.
But anyway, she did sail off, and I stayed for another couple of days with her brother and her mom and relatives and cousins, and we had a great time. I then left and rejoined my group, college group, and finished up and got back and started in September, started my senior year at North Central College with a lot of memories. And of course, I'm bringing home all these thousands of slides of Europe, and I'm showing these slides of my dear wife here, and my mom and dad are kind of looking like, "Who's this? And every other slide would be, Eva would be popping up, and they started to think, hey, there's something funny here going on, see? So to make kind of a long story short, I started my senior year, we started to correspond a little bit, and around Thanksgiving time, she got a visa from Montreal to come down and visit her Thea and Theo in Berwyn. And during that 2-week period, we dated. We were going out quite a bit. I introduced her to my parents and everything, and I think they got the sense that there was something serious going on, but she left and went back to Montreal. Well, again, corresponding, telephone bills and what have you, and I'm still in my senior year at college, and I said to her, "Come on down at Christmas time." Well, in those days, the restrictions were pretty tight on quotas and who
It's
can
like
come in
now.
and who can't come in and what have you. And they wouldn't grant her another visa. They said, you were just down there in November for Thanksgiving, you know, it's too soon to give you another visa.
Plus,
So-
can I interrupt again now?
Of course. Do I have a choice?
Unfortunately, my relatives, see his cousin, like I told you before, I didn't realize that this guy, he was falling in love with me. Because he never said anything, and I thought he was okay. You know, I mean, I didn't.
I was going to ask you what you thought.
Oh, I thought he was very polite, and I said, those Americans, they're very, you know, a nice. But he was very skinny, and he had a mustache that he never looks good with a mustache. So I thought he was very nice, but not to say, oh, you know, wow,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
So anyway, he.
Dora Mutalesa.
My relatives, when he came, and the family invited them out to see some of the slides and everything, they didn't do anything. As far as I supposed to be enrolled in a college, they just realized that Michael's in love with me, and let him take care of her. Okay, so I'm left in Canada, and I'm expecting that I'm going to be called anytime to come. I'm just stuck in Canada.
Montreal.
And I am stuck in Canada with a priest family of 4 children. I have never cooked. The only thing that I have done, it is decorate. You know, do mayonnaise with fish, you know, mayonnaise, you know, they were decorating all the stuff. Or make the tortas, cakes. I always very artistic there. But I never cooked. So I have 4 children. The wife is in the hospital, and I'm washing diapers. Those days you had diapers, and the diapers, they will go into the machine and they will catch my fingers. I got like an eczema, I'm sick. So I tell him, I'm leaving, I'm going back to Greece.
Yeah, and I told her, I called her up and I told her, of course I have
This was
other-
after Christmas?
Yes, yeah. I told her...
No, it was a little before Christmas.
A little bit before. I told her that, of course I have ulterior motives. I've got already my plans formulated. And I told her, leave Montreal, come down to Toronto. She has also friends down there in Toronto because Montreal is in the province of Quebec. It's all Catholic, whereas Toronto is in the province of Ontario. Ontario, and civil weddings are recognized there and stuff like that. You know, I'm thinking all this, but I'm not telling her everything. And so she says, okay. So she comes down.
Again, this is very important. I'm
Okay.
like 19 and a half years old, okay? I could speak French fluently. I have lost a lot of it. And so I am taking the train by myself with my suitcases and everything, a girl.
My brica.
And coming to, they were not relatives of what Michael says. It was this uncle's family that I'm not related. I don't even know what they look like, okay? And 4 o'clock in the morning, I get into a taxi from the station. No one is there to get me. From the station to go to this house. Toronto, with the Greeks at the time, it was terrible. There were like 10 families living in one house. They were all renting one house, different families. So I get there, the door opens, you know, I knock the door opens, and like 50 heads, they come out looking, you know, at me. And now I have rented a room on the top. That's my room by myself, you know, through these relatives of my uncles. And so Michael now knows some of it, but he doesn't know how bad the situation is. He thought I was going to some relatives of my uncles.
But the decision to leave Montreal to go to Toronto was for...
I told her to do that because I figured ultimately I was going to.
Plus, he had started to talk to me. He never proposed. But the letters, they have
later
got
I did.
juicier and juicier and juicier, you know, as they were coming along. And when I came to Chicago, I mean, I understood, and I started to fall in love with him, you know. But it was just through and he would call me almost every day.
And I convinced my mother, and I says, "Let's go up to Toronto. I want you to."
And his
let's
parents.
let's go up and see what's going on. I want to go up there and see what's going on. I want to see what we can do, and I'd like to get this girl down here, etc. So we went up there, and she met us, and we went to where she was living, and I'm Cardiamu.
She started crying.
You know, with the bare naked bulb hanging in the room, and people all over the place, deplorable. So I just decided I'm going to take the bull by the horns. I proposed to her in a taxi cab driving to the city hall. I says, "You will marry me, won't you?" We went to the city hall. The two witnesses, our original
They're
first
from
marriage
Rhodes. I
license
don't even know who they
is
are.
Canadian. It's we were married in Toronto originally, and we went to the Justice of the Peace. We couldn't do it because it was January 1st and everything was closed. So January 2nd, in 1959, we got married in the courthouse. And that afternoon, we went to a restaurant called Basil's. That was our honeymoon dinner and stuff like that. Of course, we're married by the JP, but then he said Padremenis in Ecclesia.
Oh, those days wasn't like now.
Yeah, yeah. It's and I was there with my mother and Eva, and that night we said goodbye, and I left and came back to the United States with my mother, and that was in January. Now we're married. The only people know it is my mother, my father, and her aunt and uncle. My roommates in college didn't even know. Legally, I took my vet off, my ring off, and I put it in the...
Because you were not really
no,
married
as far as the
we
parents
were
are concerned, right.
Mm-hmm.
And we started the paperwork and trying to get her down, and somewhere in April...
But excuse me, also, but you don't have the facts, that's what I'm saying.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yeah, the thing is also, when I met Michael's parents, the chemistry between his father especially and me, it was something unbelievable. I lost my dad when I was 8 years old, and all of a sudden he became my father. He was an absolutely, I mean, his mom is a wonderful lady, but his father was a very special
He was a very
man.
special man.
He helped a lot of people, he was just a wonderful man. And so we create this relationship, you know, this chemistry. He would look at me and I would look at him. And so he was the one who encouraged, because he, as soon as they met me, they wanted me, you know. And so in March, I was up there now in Toronto, and then it was terrible. I couldn't stay in this house. So
And
I
what were
went
you
to,
doing in the meantime while you were?
I
in
went and I
Toronto?
worked. I was going to YMCA, and I was taking some English, more English for my college. And also I worked at a florist place, and I was wrapping, you know, flowers and stuff. The silk flowers I was doing just to do something, you know. And then I went and I stayed with another family, and then Dad came up. One day he calls me. Michael called me.
Yeah.
And he says, "Dad is coming up to get
Yeah.
to come to bring you down." Now Dad didn't have. He had like a
High school
scholarhio, not high school,
You would get high
scholarhio
school.
education. It was like a junior, you know, high.
Okay.
And but he was a very, very, you know, talented man. So he came and he says, "We're going to go to Proxenio tomorrow." I said, "Okay," you know. He said, "I'm going to get you down." I says, "Dad, how you're going to do it?" So anyway, we went. He talked with the Proxeno. He was from Elmhurst, the Proxeno. He was very sympathetic because he had children our age at the time. And then it comes out, he says, "Give me your passport." So he takes my passport, they stamp it, and I come down.
She was on the next
But I was
flight
now
with
legally
with
married to
Dad coming
Michael, so I
back.
can come down.
Now,
So
that
you
was-
came down from Toronto
Yeah,
to...
Dad brought her down.
Yes,
Yeah.
to Aurora.
He met with the
No,
counselor.
no, to Berwyn, where
Oh,
I
to
stayed with my
Berwyn.
Thea.
Oh, to Berwyn.
Yeah.
He met with the consulate and talked with her for about an hour. The guy was from the local area here. He was from Elmhurst, Illinois. They became good buddies. And the guy comes out and he says, "Deva, give me your passport." He takes it in there, stomp, stomp, stomp. And she was on the plane coming back with Dad that night. And but she went right to Berwyn to live with her
Yeah, can we step it for a
aunt
second?
and uncle. She came down and lived there, and we made all the arrangements, and was married on July 5th. So from about April to July 5th, 1959 is when we got married at All Saints Greek Orthodox Church in Joliet, Illinois. Big wedding, and of course my dad, having been a prominent businessman downtown in Aurora, there were more Evrei at my wedding. I think there were Greeks, because he knew all of the Jewish businessmen up and down the Broadway in downtown Aurora. And we married in, as I said, July 5th, 1959. I graduated from college, and then we got married. It was a couple weeks later I got married. I began at the University of Illinois College of Dentistry in Chicago, now married. We got an apartment up near St. Andrews, up on Rosewood, about 5800 North in Chicago. And Eva was working at Marshall Fields, downtown on State Street, in the department called Fields Afar, because she had a very delightful accent. She was European. They figured when they hired her at Marshall Field, she would be perfect in this department that sold, merchandise from all over the world. And I started my freshman year at dental school, and I would take the Alavetta. I would take the Howard Street L and come down and make a transfer and go out and get off there by Cook County Hospital at Paulina and walk to the dental school. And I even, I brown bagged it with my little lunch bag. Many of my classmates to this day still talk about the fact how European women are and how unique they are as compared to the American wives. I forgot my lunch one day, and my wife packed my lunch, got on the L, came all the way down, which was about a 45-minute trip, all the way down to the dental school to bring me my lunch. And the guys are all looking at her like, what, are you crazy or something, you know? So he could have gone and gotten a hot dog or something like that. No, I was telling them about you coming all the way down to the dental school to bring me my lunch one day. But anyway, I started out there at the University of Illinois. By the end of my freshman year, Eva became pregnant, and the apartment that we were staying at was too small for us. So we looked around for something else with my dad and found a little
No, you
apartment.
told them that Dad and Mom there were supporting us.
Yeah, my mom and dad were supporting us completely. Although during the summers, I would work at the nightclub as a bartender.
But that's still, it was just gravy.
Those are going to be in the way of the camera.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, when you sit over there, yeah.
yeah.
Take it
Okay.
to
Put
the...
it over there.
I'll put it here.
But anyway, Eva became pregnant. We found a place in Melrose Park, and we lived
I don't
there.
want flies, that's all. I can put them all together.
What-
if
No,
you-
no, that's fine. They're okay. It's okay now.
Okay, all right.
We,
You're not going to put all this stuff in.
every bit of it's going to the Hellenic Museum,
You're-
as it is right now.
You're joking.
No, I'm not joking.
It's cute.
I'm
Keep
dead
going.
serious.
Even the cheese pies, yes.
I'm dead serious. So we lived there for 3 years while I continued to go to school. Eva did not work anymore. We were solely supported by my parents.
And also my dream of going to school,
Went down the tubes.
yeah, because we couldn't be supported
Yeah.
for both of us. Because, and what I wanted to be, it was a dentist. Okay?
Well, I was
So
in
I
dental,
married one.
I was in dental school, and we had our first child, which is Elena, or yes,
Elena.
Elena, and then along came Michael, Jr., and my senior year I graduated and immediately enlisted in the Navy as a dental officer, United States Navy. I was stationed at Great Lakes, working in boot camp there, working on boys who are going through boot camp that needed dental work. I was one of the dental officers there. I was a commissioned officer. And Eva had our third child, Gregory John. He was delivered at the Great Lakes Naval Hospital there. And then that fateful day when I received a telegram from Washington stating that you will detach duty and report to the 3rd Marine Division. Of course, I looked at it and I really didn't know what in God's name they're talking about here. Well, we have the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The Marine Corps is a branch of the Department of the Navy. In the Marines, they don't have medical officers, dental officers, chaplains, and there's one other group of men who are the naval officers that go ashore and coordinate the shelling of the beach by the big battleships prior to the Marines making their amphibious landing. They rely upon the Navy for this, the Navy to transport the Marines and get them up to the shore, etc. But if you're ever in a Marine Corps base, any medical or dental officer or the chaplains are all Navy men. So I immediately was distraught. I was very upset about this. We had a chaplain on board there at Great Lakes by the name of Father Nick Karras, Greek Orthodox. He was the Orthodox chaplain there. I went to him and literally in tears and saying, I've got a wife and 3 children. No, excuse me, Gregory had not been born yet. A wife and 2 children and 1 in the oven, as we used to say in the Navy. And I got no sympathy from him. He was a very die-hard military man, and he says, "My son,
He was single too.
you will do, yeah, archimondritis itane," and he says, "You will do fine." Well, that night when I came home and told Eva about this, she became a basket case. I mean, you know, it meant my leaving for 13 months. And
And what year was that?
this was 1964 now.
Actually, it started 63. He's supposed to leave at Christmas.
And
Yes.
where were you
To go
supposed
where? To go where?
To-
Well,
Okinawa.
I'm getting to that.
Oh.
I was to report to the 3rd Marine Division, and I find out that the 3rd Marine Division is stationed in Okinawa. And as I say, I was very upset about it, very distraught. We had Father Karras come over the house.
No
and-
family attachments.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're with the Marines.
The Marines on overseas billets do not allow you to bring dependents. What was upsetting is I had classmates of mine who also went into the Air Force and the Navy, but and some of them got stationed in Okinawa, but if they were at the naval base, they brought their family. At the Air Force, they brought their family, everything. Marines do not allow family members at overseas billet because they have to be ready to go at a moment's notice. They don't want to mess around with family. So after meeting with Father Karras and all that, you know, he no sympathy, and then all of a sudden he calls me up and he says, "Kita ti Economou theos." I said, "What? What are you talking about?" He says, "I'm being shipped to Okinawa too." And he says, "God is sending me there to watch over you." See? So we both went to Okinawa, but prior to that, I went to Camp Pendleton in California for 1 month and played cowboys and Indians with the Marine Corps, because when you're stationed with the Marines, you have to wear the Marine type uniform. It's a little different. The belt buckle's different. The capello is a little different and everything like that.
Paracato.
So we spent a month there, and from there I flew from Camp Pendleton to Frisco, from San Francisco to Anchorage, Alaska, to Tachikawa, Japan, down to Okinawa. We got in about 2 o'clock in the morning after flying for something like 22 hours on military air transport. And I spent 1 year, 12 months, stationed in Okinawa. I kind of lucked out. I became the commanding officer of a clinic there because the man who was the CO was rotating back to the States, and I became a good friend with the head honcho, the commanding officer of all the dental clinics in Okinawa for the 3rd Marine Division. And he became a good friend of mine, and he called me up one day and he says, "Michael, I want you to take over that clinic." I says, "I can't, I'm not feel great." He says, "Yes, you are, you're going to take over it." So I did. Became very close with a lot of Greeks we had there. Father Karras was there. We had our church services. I became his psalti. Of course, everything was done in English. Some of the troparia, the apolitica and everything, we would sing them in Greek. But basically the service was a modified type of service. And we had our epitafio at Easter time, and had a nice little Greek community. It was an Eastern Orthodox, as we had Russians also there too, but there still was a large group of Greeks that were there with us. And I spent 1 year there, as I said, and it was a pretty interesting tour. I had an opportunity to spend 2 weeks in Japan, a couple of weeks in Hong Kong, and then came that beautiful day where I rotated home and came home. When I left, Gregory was, what, 6 weeks old?
4 weeks.
4 weeks old. He was 4 weeks old. And that's one memory I'll never forget. The day I was at the airport at O'Hare, standing there in uniform, saying goodbye to my family to leave for 13 months. And little Alina, as everybody was kissing and saying goodbye, as I turned around and started to walk down the ramp, I could hear Alina holler, "Bye, Daddy, I love you." Well, I lost it. And I sat on that plane and cried most of the way, all the way to California. But I came home and found Gregory with long curls all the way down. She didn't want to cut his hair until.
So then you didn't have a
until I
chance
come-
to see him getting
No.
born, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's
He was 6.
He's playing soldier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
When I'm home,
Raising 3 children.
with 3 children, and I'm just upset because there were other people that they didn't even enlist. He was concerned about, opening the office and then being enlisted. And I was
Drafted.
So the only way now, these children, they couldn't write. We are corresponding with
Audio tapes.
audio tapes. I used to pinch Gregory because he was a very good baby. I used to pinch him in order for him to cry, for his father to hear his.
So you weren't there when he was born? You
Yes,
were-
I
you
was.
were.
Yes.
But I left and he was, what, 4 weeks old?
Yes, but actually it was, thank God, to Senator Dirksen. He was a wonderful senator of Illinois. And Mike was supposed to leave before the baby was born. He was going to leave at Christmas time. And he put it as a hardship. And that time also he helped us to bring my mother from Greece.
Senator Dirksen did.
So my mom has been with us for 40 years. And it was the year that Michael left. Because first of all, Michael, he's been a wonderful husband, but he was in the beginning, he was overly protective for me. I mean, you cannot believe that now. Most of the time I'm in Florida and here and there. But he was extremely protective. He didn't even want me to learn how to drive. So anyway, it wasn't going to work with me, but anyway. And here he leaves me. I mean, we used to go to almost every place. Because you understand, I had the children, one after the other. Yeah, we got married in 59, and by 64, I had all three of them. So, and because of the snow and everything, we used to live in Waukegan at the time when he was in the military. We had a house there. And he used to come home and take me to the commissary and to all these places, when the weather was. So now he leaves, I have to go to the doctors with the children. I have to go to the commissary by myself. I'm spinning a couple times, on Waukegan on Sheridan Road. And that made me a tough woman. It was a good experience in some ways. But it was tough. It was 13 months.
So your mother was able to come over and help
Yes.
you out?
Yes.
We brought her over. Senator Dirksen put in a hardship bill. He got my orders modified enough so I could stay until Gregory was born. As I say, he was only 4 weeks old when I left. And in the meantime, we brought her mother over because she was going to be left with 3 children, etc., and there was no problem. Of course, once we got her over here, then we just kept her here.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law has lived
No,
with us for, what, 40 years.
We had to work things out.
Acus?
The
My
lawyer,
Petera, 40 years.
the lawyer, Mrs. Geocaris,
Yeah, Geocaris.
she was a
Adeline.
senator too.
Yeah.
She became our lawyer. It cost us a few bucks at the time. It was quite a bit of money, and we were, Michael has just been in the military, but my brother helped a little bit, and we kept through. In fact, it was funny because I went to the embassy back and forth, to the Proxenio, and this guy, he says to me, my mom was like at the time like 50, 51 years old, and he says, Mrs. Kontos, have you thought about finding somebody and marrying your mother off in order to keep her like they used to do, But anyway,
We also
it was
brought
tough.
her brother over too.
A year
when-
after we were married.
Yeah, a year after we were married, we brought her brother over here, and he was in this area and he worked.
He
and
went.
whatever.
He went to the university.
He went to North Central College
Yeah.
also. Getting back to our 3 children, I suppose.
Can I ask you one thing?
Sure.
Why did you decide to enlist in the Navy? What was
He liked the uniform.
No, there were a lot of friends of mine who were dentists who were much older than me who got drafted when the Korean conflict came up. And I'm glad you brought this up because there's an important thing I overlooked here regarding my tour of duty. When I was in college and high school, we had the draft.
Okay.
And in order to stay out of the draft, you got what was called a student deferment. And on my draft folder was a big red stamp on it that says liable to 35. When you got a student deferment like I did for college and dental school, I was liable to the age of 35 for draft. Things were, the war hadn't started in Vietnam yet,
Right.
but I saw what happened to some of the friends of mine who would be in practice 4 or 5 years and then they got drafted out to go to the Korean War.
Okay.
So I decided, maybe it was poor thinking, maybe it was silly on my part, but I thought, let's do it. Plus, it was almost like in dentistry, unlike medicine, we don't have internship.
So it
You
was a good
graduate,
experience.
yeah, you graduate from dental school, you take your state board exams, and you open your office. In medicine, they usually go through an internship and then sometimes 3 or 4 year residency, what have you. this was kind of like an internship and a residency because it afforded me the opportunity to get some experience, pick up my speed, etc. while I was in the Navy. In 1965, when I am ready to come home, things are getting very hot in Vietnam. I tried to get down to Da Nang 2 or 3 times, but I was what they called a short timer, meaning that if you're less than 3 months to rotate back home, they didn't want you leaving the island. She kept hollering at me, "You're crazy, you sit to the loss, you want to go down to Da Nang, where they're shooting at everybody." But I thought, you know what, the heck, I wanted the experience of having been there. The day that I left Okinawa, they froze all the medical officers' leave orders. And I shipped out the next day, and I flew to Treasure Island, which is in San Francisco. It's a naval base to get processed out. I'm all through. And I found out the next day they froze all the dental officers' leave orders. I missed it by 1 day, otherwise I'd have been another year in Vietnam. See? So by 1 year, I missed it all. And ultimately came home. And in 1965, I started looking. I worked temporarily in a couple of
And you were done
offices.
with your service?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I was still in the reserves
Okay.
for about another 5 or 6 years, and then they asked me if I wanted to re-up or do, and I said, no, thank you. And I got my honorable discharge.
Some people they did, but because of our hardship,
Yes, for the family.
I was just very upset, and
Yeah.
I didn't want any, to have another war, and for him to be called. It was not war. It was the 3 children.
Right.
So you were in the Navy for how long?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. 2 years. And then I came home in '65, and as I said, I worked trying to decide where I wanted to open up. A friend of mine over here in a large dental arts building asked me if I wanted to join their group, and I said no. And then a very good friend of mine said, go down to a development down here between Oswego and Montgomery, Illinois, called Boulder Hill.
And your dad also.
And my dad convinced me, so I went down there, and they had a large shopping center. And while that was getting all prepared, I worked for a little bit at the Girls Reform School up in Geneva, working on some of the inmates up there. I worked in Naperville in another doctor's office temporarily.
In fact, he was an Olympic swimmer.
Yeah, Hellenic. But I ended up starting out my practice in 1965, October of 1965 in Boulder Hill, and in about 600 square feet. I practiced there for about 5 years. The developer expanded the shopping center. I moved across the parking lot to 1,000 square feet and was extremely busy. Next door to me was a men's store that went broke and bankrupt. I broke through the wall and expanded to 2,250 square feet, and at that time I brought in an associate, Dr. Michael Tierney, who happens to live 2 blocks from here, and he was an associate with me for 5 years and then bought in as a full partner, and he's been my partner for almost 30 years now. And we practiced there for a good number of years, and across the street from this large parking lot was a large corner. It literally was a corner. It would be equivalent to 4 lots. You could build 4 homes on it. And the man who owned it was going broke, and it went into a receivership, bankrupt. We bought it for a song, and we built our clinic, which is 3,600 square feet. We employ 15 girls in that office now. It's my partner and I. And I've been in practice since 1965, which, if you figure 2 years of the Navy, I graduated in '63. I've been practicing dentistry for 41 years. Now, to go backwards a little bit, we talked about my coming back, and I have 3 children. My oldest is Elena, or I should say Dr. Elena Vranis. Elena has gone to dental school, graduated.
Because of the dream, of her mother.
Of her mother. She wanted.
When Elena was born, in her ear, I whispered, "You're going to be a dentist, no matter what." And she fought me for many years because she was very good in many, many subjects. And in fact, she wanted to be a marine biologist for a long time. And I said, if there is no fund, there is no money. So you're going to go to dentistry. It's a good field for a woman. And 2 years ago, she was in my family room, and she came over, she grabbed me, she kissed me, and she says, thank you for making me go into the profession that I love now.
Mm.
So it's a big, you know, it is. I mean,
Great
I feel like
accomplishment for you.
my dream has come true,
Yeah.
and now she's pushing for one of the girls, but I don't know if they're going to do it.
Now,
Yeah.
were you encouraged by your mother, since your mother, you had said that she had wanted to marry a
No, it was her parents,
her
mother.
parents. Her parents. Oh, okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
I always wanted to, I was a good student in high school. And of course, I went to a very small high school down in Oswego. There were only 36 in my graduating class in high school. But when I got into college, I knew I wanted to go into a profession. I wasn't interested in law, and I said I wanted Uncle Doctor, my Dr. Joannides, which would be on my mother's side. My grandmother's brother, Dr. Minas Ioannidis in Chicago, was a very prominent thoracic surgeon there. And I always admired him. You know, when he walked in the room, there was some aura about him, you know, like, oh my God, you know, God is here. A very famous, rich, prominent doctor. So I said, you're going to become a doctor too.
But
and I
also-
changed my mind and went into dentistry.
Yeah. But also, your mother, I was very proud of you.
Oh,
because
yes.
you were a very good student. From the 3 children, he was the the most achiever.
Yeah.
And so she was it was like with my children. It was not finishing high school what you're going to do. I mean, they were going to college. They were going to a profession. You know, like, I mean, I was brought up that way, even that I was not able to, achieve my dream. And so with Michael, I mean, it was not a question, neither his father or mother, to say, now, are we going to start a business for him, or,
Right,
is he
right.
going to the restaurant? Michael was going to become, a professional.
Yes.
Yeah. So I decided, or convinced, or she did, my daughter to go on into dental school. And our second child, Michael, or I should more appropriately say Father Michael, Michael had always had his dreams of going into the priesthood. He'd always talked about it. My wife fought him for many years, maybe 11, 12, 13
He
years.
was 11 years old. Michael was 11 years old when he had gone. It was when the Metropolitan had just more or less come. And we didn't let our children go to Fanari. They had some problems in Fanari. So Father John, they had some problems with their people. I'm not going to elaborate. So they, Father John Artemis, he said that Juliet, Aurora, were going to go a different direction as far as camp. So they went to Quad Cities, someplace. And the Metropolitan went to visit them. So Mike was 11 years old. He came home and he said to me, I met a man with the eagle eyes. So I says, who? He says, the spotty, the bishop, came to visit us, and he says, Mom, I want to become a priest. And I says, go and sleep. We'll pass. I says, tomorrow you're going to be garbage man or something else, at 11 years old. And we fought for about 13 years. I didn't want him to. Not because I didn't want him to, it was that I knew the hardships that he would go through as a clergyman. It's not an easy vocation. So, anyway.
We ended up having quite a discussion one night here at the house, Fones, Klamata, what have you. And Michael and Gregory, both of my sons, did not go through the Aurora public school system. Elena did. She went to West Aurora High School. They went to Marmion Military Academy. It is now called Marmion Academy. It still is military, but it's become optional, which I have a problem with. I don't think they should have done it, but that's neither here nor there, because both my sons who graduated from Marmion Military Academy graduated as men. They graduated as gentlemen. They learned proper poise. They learned how to stand up when a woman entered the room, and they learned how to say yes, sir,
It helped them also in
no, sir.
the religion, too.
And yes, it was a Catholic, even though my boys were, Greek Orthodox. And it taught them a lot. Both the boys were altar boys, were involved with the church, and we will talk a little bit on our involvement with the church, too, and what have you. But Michael did okay at Marmion. He wasn't the world's greatest student. He did okay. He was graduated as an officer. So did Gregory. He got to North Central College, and
But Michael also, you have to say that Michael was very, very artistic, and without putting any pressure on him, he felt because his father was a medical, you know, in the
Yeah,
medical
science, yeah.
science, that we were looking for the first son to become a physician or a dentist, and we never did. I mean, I
No.
never said to the boys, "You have to be like your dad."
Right.
I did it with the daughter. And so he put a lot of pressure on himself, and he started taking pre-medical. No, pre-medical
Oh,
at the
pre-medical,
beginning.
okay.
And he was doing really poorly because that was not his forte.
Sure.
Now, he is very, very talented in music. He's very talented in theater. So all that, it was perfect thing for going to the priesthood, you know. But he graduated from college with not, you know, on the top of his class. Do you want to stop?
Let's pause and